Welcome, everyone, to Asian Pacific Voices Radio, where you'll find stimulating conversations about diverse stories and topics affecting our Asian Pacific American communities. I'm Sasha Foo. This is the first episode of Season 4 for Asian Pacific Voices, and I want to wish everyone Happy New Year. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy Lunar New Year. This is the Year of the Dragon. Now, we're going to take a little departure from our usual format because usually it's one host interviewing one person, but today you can see there's three of us, three hosts. So we're going to sit down and just have an informal roundtable discussion about what we're anticipating for this new season of Asian Pacific Voices. I'm going to start off by giving a short introduction. I'm Sasha Foo. I'm an actor, playwright, and former broadcast news reporter and anchor. I was the first Asian American anchor at CNN. And this year, I'm looking forward to hearing more about what we're going to do about the immigration crisis at our border, and also a little bit about the pushback against diversity and equity and inclusion programs. I don't know if, we can get into that later. Rasha, why don't you go next?
Thanks, Sasha. Again, like Sasha was mentioning, Happy New Year to everyone. Hopefully a lot of exciting things coming to fruition this year. I'm Rasha Goel. I am a television host, journalist, and producer, primarily specializing in the entertainment field. And it's been so exciting. I was the first actually South Asian host to be cast by Dick Clark Productions for the live red carpet for Golden Globes. And, I'm really excited. One thing too, yes, I'm really interested in seeing what happens to a lot of the DEI programs, especially as we ended last year, how a lot of those programs were cut. But also when we speak of diversity in entertainment, I'd like to see more of how that's going to roll out and how we're really bringing stories into the mainstream. I don't want to be a box that's constantly checked off. And I feel like that still happens at a lot of the places and times. Like, we are here integrated in community. So much has been happening with the Asian American community. I'd love to see how that develops a little bit more. And I'm going to throw it over to you, Joanne. Welcome.
Hey, thanks, Rasha. Thanks, Sasha. Hey, everybody. My name is Joanne Whitlock. So I am an Air Force active duty officer, currently stationed in Southern California. So I'm a logistics officer by trade, and I've been in the military for about 11 years. So very, very fortunate to be part of Asian Pacific Voices Radio. This is going to be my first season hosting. And so I feel extremely lucky to be in the company of these two amazing ladies. I'm not really in the entertainment industry, as you know, so I am kind of the odd man out in this group. So my vision for this season and what I hope to bring in and what I hope to introduce to the season is introduce guests with backgrounds that we don't typically get into as much or get as much exposure on the show. Military, obviously with my background, military, politics, state, federal government, personnel from those fields, particularly women in the leadership positions in those fields, especially with the current state of affairs in the world, election year. So I know a lot is happening, and I'd love to see and talk to guests that represent us in those fields. So very, very excited about what the next season is going to bring.
And thank you for your service, Joanne. I have to acknowledge that.
So
it's so
much.
Exciting.
We're really happy to have you here because that's a perspective we really need, especially women in leadership roles. I want to mention something at the top of the news broadcast. This is something about the podcast about immigration. And this was interesting to me. I've learned that, people are wondering about who's showing up at our southern border. And I was surprised, but then not surprised to hear that the fastest growing segment is migrants from China. I don't know if there's been any discussion about that. Yeah, it used to be the tide of migrants was coming from Central America, but now they're Chinese migrants. And I'm wondering if you have any thoughts about why so many Chinese are trying to get into America now.
So from my perspective, nothing that I can necessarily talk about clearly, and I'm sure a lot of that information is classified, but I would, especially with everything that's going on in the Pacific, I know we see in the news about, things ramping up in China and all our kind of near peer threats is what the military calls it. So I think the ramp up of immigration of Chinese people coming to America is because of all the conflict that's happening in that country right now, and I think America is still seen as a place to escape to, and it's still seen as a paradise compared to certain things that are going on in their particular countries. I don't know, Rasha, have you seen in anything in your interviews or anything like that with the news what your thoughts are on that?
I have to be completely transparent and say I'm still learning more about this because, as Sasha had mentioned, we normally see a lot of migrants coming from Central America. But I think one of the biggest things I've always realized in my studies or in research is that, yes, because of the conflicts within someone's home country and people not having that voice or feeling that they're really being suppressed in their own countries is a reason why they do look to go to other countries. And I think that's a great point you bring up, Joanne. Yes, we still, no matter with all the trials and tribulations we have in our own country, in the States, we are still looked upon as a country where there is opportunity, where there are opportunities to grow and for families to flourish and for children to at least have an opportunity. And I think that's why people still aim to come here. I find it very interesting at the same point too, because I feel in the past few years, countries like China and India have also been thriving on the global scale. They've been really recognized more as far as economical growth and just especially in the technology center, but medical, everything. So I'm curious to see how this is going to play out and if there is a resolve that really is at the end of the spectrum for all of us.
One of the interesting things is in covering stories as a news reporter is that if you apply for asylum in the United States, you must show to the U.S. immigration authorities that you are somehow a victim of repression or violence in your country. If you say, I am here for economic reasons, they're unlikely to give you an asylum uh, approval. It has to be more than economic. So I'm wondering, the Chinese migrants, a lot of them, I believe, are coming here for economic reasons because they can't really support their families in China. But some of them may be coming here because they feel persecuted because they're from a religious minority that's being persecuted. Perhaps they're Muslim. I don't know. So I'm wondering about, it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out as far as what the United States grants in terms of, oh, you're here because you can't make a living in China, or you're here because you're being persecuted.
And Sasha, I recently learned about this through a Bollywood movie, which I didn't know about, that there were so many South Asian migrants that were coming in trucks and so many who lose their life. And it was more towards the UK than the US,
Yeah.
but I can imagine all that happening. So I think it's going to be interesting to, investigate that on our show. And then even moving along I think we have so many interesting guests lined up for this season that come from diverse backgrounds. And in the past few seasons too, just even recognizing the array and the variety of people that we've been able to find from all different diasporas and all different backgrounds. I'm really excited to bring that to the show, amongst the three of us and our other fourth host, and present those stories to our audiences. What do you both think about that?
No, absolutely. I think I would really love to hear more stories of the immigration stories of different personnel. And being Filipino American myself, so from the Philippines, people, the biggest export of Philippines is people. So it's an actual term, OFW, Overseas Filipino Workers. They are,
Yes.
there's more. Yeah. So it's an actual terminology that is used, and it's a government terminology that's used, OFWs. And all throughout the countries of the world, there are Filipino workers in every sector, whether it's nannies, whether it's healthcare, home cleaning, all that stuff. And because they know that they can make more in any other country than they do in the Philippines. So I would love to hear more just raw, visceral stories about these immigrants and immigration stories, whether it's here in America or in other countries, because it is something that doesn't get highlighted very often. And so I am very excited to hear more of those authentic stories.
This is a little bit of a tangent, but it's kind of coming off of what Joanne was saying about people from the Pacific Islands and that area of the world. I have been interested in how climate change is affecting some of the communities, the island communities that they're seeing entire land masses disappear because of flooding and rising sea levels. And that's going to force migration of some of those folks to other places. I'd love to talk to a climate scientist or a scientist and talk about what happens to people who are living in the Solomon Islands or places like that, where they're definitely feeling more of the effects of rising sea levels. I don't know about you guys.
And that's a great point you bring up. Well, it's interesting that you mentioned that because I recently was in Costa Rica, and that was one of the things I was learning more about, where even, whether it's with the animal habitats or with the growth of crops and farming, everything has been impacted there. And they are trying to find different ways now of just even daily living, because there's situations that they hadn't seen 10 years ago. And now they're trying to adapt to that. But I mean, going, to the Asian Pacific again, yes, I'd be curious to see how those islands and the people that are natives to those places, how they're navigating.
Yes. So to all our listeners, if you know anybody that is, familiar with the climate change and have that expertise, please bring them onto our show. We'd love to talk to them.
And I'd love to ask both of you, especially because I'm on the entertainment side. We've had some great seasons with some incredible artists. One of my favorites, of course, was Margaret Cho. How do you both, as viewers and just in the jobs that you do, right? When you look at the media, how do you feel? Do you feel that we're still kind of checking boxes off when it comes to representation? Is it expanding more? What kind of stories would you like to see more that are being told out there? Because I know for me, I would love to see stories where it's not the typical South Asian again. There's a new show coming out, Expats, and they've really tackled on the Asian American community and exploring topics that we're not comfortable talking about. And I was really excited about that. But I'd love to just even gauge what kind of stories would you like to hear more about or see in the media when it comes to our Asian American communities?
For me, I'd really love to see women in leadership positions, especially, again, going back to being Filipino American. Our stereotypical role is nurses and home care and nanny. And a lot of times, even growing up, that's kind of what our elders and what our families have boxed us into are in those roles. So for me, it's extremely inspiring and extremely motivates me when I hear stories of Filipino Americans who have chosen to break that mold, whether it's to the disappointment of their families or what that may be, but who have chosen to pursue their own paths that's not stereotypic of what their heritage and culture are, and creating these new opportunities for everybody. That's why I am extremely proud of the military, for usually Asian Americans. So in the military, we do barrier analysis for what keeps Asian Americans from serving in the military. And a lot of things that we find is that your first generation Asian Americans or our parents or grandparents, they look down on military service. And so I'd love to hear more stories about us breaking that mold. That's why the percentage of Asian Americans in the military and government are so small, because there's so much influence from parents and grandparents of, that's not a very proud position to be in, or looking down in military service. So those are the kind of stories I'd really love to hear more about, is choosing to forge your own path despite what you were told and what you grew up with.
And you're doing that, Joanne, so I love that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Applause for you. Yeah. Forging a leadership path. I think my own perspective is that I think we're actually doing pretty well with putting out entertainment or product that doesn't fall into a stereotypical, an Asian American role. Like, look at Everything Everywhere All at Once. I mean, that was a crazy fantasy. It didn't necessarily it was meaningful that the main character was an Asian woman, but yeah, why not have an older middle-aged woman gallivanting through the multiverse? Why not? And then Beef, which has won all these awards.
Yes.
And that's not a stereotypical, that's an Asian American story. I mean, they happen to be Asian American and they live in Los Angeles, but that is a story that everyone can relate to, and it's not particular to their ethnicity. So in that respect, I think that's really great. But to find stories that are particular to one person's experience would also be good. So I think there's room for all of it.
Agreed. Yeah, Beef has been so exciting. I binged that series. I just loved the writing on it. I loved the writing on it.
Yes, I'm watching Ali Wong win all these awards lately. It's award season. Watching her acceptance speeches is extremely, extremely inspiring and motivating. So, Rasha, in your line of work, obviously with interviewing and celebrities and entertainment industry, have you seen a big shift from when you started to now on Asian American representation? Especially with
Oh,
stories that, like Sasha said, is just not your stereotypical Asian story.
oh my gosh, absolutely. And I mean, even like when I think of the work that Sasha's done, right? She was one of the very few at that time and being the first. And so from the time that I've entered to now, yes, there's been a huge, I would say, expansion, not only with the kind of stories, but I think the fact too, where we're seeing Asian Americans participate in Hollywood. I feel, and especially for myself, right? My parents had wanted me to go into the medical profession. I even started off as a pharmacy major and I just was like, I can't do this. I'm a communications person. And I think what's been so nice to see is that people are embracing their interest and their talent. So a lot of times the business, the engineering, I know it sounds so repetitive, but that's the way our communities are, right? Success is
Right.
measured by how well we do in those fields, especially, and those fields are lucrative, the engineering, law, medical. And so I think what's been a huge shift is where people in our communities are recognizing, I am an artist. I am creative and I want to explore this because it's a part of me. So I think number one, that's been great. Number two, also, what's been really great to see in Hollywood is that in order to create that shift, you have to have people in those positions, right? So, like, I'm on camera, but I'm kind of dependent on a producer or someone who's behind the scene who's going to give me that opportunity. So, a lot of those positions are now opening up to people in the Asian American community. And I think that's really helpful too, because when you have people in those positions are able to kind of navigate that door. And so that's been fun. And then of course with, digital media, and all of us having access to our own phones, we don't have to wait for someone to give us an opportunity. We can all get on and just record a story and put it up on YouTube or something and just create that momentum. So definitely to answer your question, Joanne, I think it has changed. It's been exciting. Um, and I hope that we can continue to grow and just really support each other more as a community as well. I think that's really important, banding together and helping uplift one another too.
I think allies or being an ally is really important too, so that not only do we lift up our Asian American, uh, colleagues, but also give support to our Latino or our Black friends
100%.
who are working in the industries which we're interested in, whether it's the military or government or entertainment. And I think that collaboration is really necessary. I think that came together. I'm from the entertainment perspective, the strikes by SAG-AFTRA and the writers. I mean, who would have thought that these trade unions could stand up to some very powerful Hollywood interests? But they did, which was, to me, it was very impressive.
Same,
Yeah, that's
same,
such a
same.
good point because I see the underserved communities, underrepresented communities. Sometimes you see a division amongst them, and that kind of breaks my heart when you see that because you're right. We're stronger together. We don't have to be Asian Americans just banding together or Black Americans just banding together. All underserved communities should be banding together.
So I want
Yeah.
to ask,
And supporting each other.
supporting each other, and giving the others an idea that no, it's not just this community, that community, and that we are together. We form a greater community. One of the things that I'm interested in is, 2-3 years ago during the pandemic, there was this rising tide of Asian hate. So now we're seeing this tide of hate against our Muslim and Jewish friends, right? So I think as
Yeah.
Asian leaders, we need to say, we're supporting you too. We want to be allies with you to fight the bias and discrimination that's coming your way right now.
Absolutely. I think that is so key. And it's so pivotal for us to stand by one another, and to let people know that you don't have to be from that particular community just to support or just to let them know that you are an ally. But again, having that voice to let people know that we're here. We're all in this together. And, for me, I think one of the biggest things I've realized too is that it comes down to humanity. I have to bring this up because I recently watched Ava DuVernay's film Origins, and
Mhm.
it is excellent. And when I left that film, I thought I want to really push this film, because what was so great is there were 3 to 4 different narratives in that film, but the end meaning that came out of that was that we're all human beings at the end of the day, but because of the power struggle and ego, things are just misconstrued and, taken out of context, and we forget that we are impacting other human beings. And it was just such a powerful film that it often reminds me too, in what we're doing, the 3 of us, with storytelling or story creating. Even Sasha, you're venturing into the acting industry, and and are an actress, and telling these other stories through this medium as well. Like, we are here as one. We're human beings at the end of the day, and that comes first. So that was really interesting for me as well.
It's really powerful. I definitely have to put that movie.
Yes, I am so behind that movie.
I'm wondering, what do you think about this upcoming election season? We're going to hear a lot of rhetoric. I'm already hearing anti-immigrant rhetoric from the man who will probably be the Republican nominee. He's talking about immigrants poisoning our blood, and as a daughter of immigrants, I mean, those words hurt me to the core.
It's concerning, Sasha. I think, especially for a lot of us, like you said, I'm also a daughter of immigrants and of parents who've worked so hard to be here. And it's scary in a way, because I don't know if this is going to create a bigger rift and divide. It's like we have spent so much time trying to bring and communities together and unify and fight, this system. And then it's like you move a step forward, but then it feels like it might be a step backward. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen, but it is very concerning to me, especially because I feel like we have come so far. When we look at our parents and their generation, or even the generations from before, and how far we've moved in this country, and what we've even contributed, right, to the US from all the different communities that we come from. So it's disheartening in a way. And I'm really curious to see how that's going to unfold. What do you
Yeah,
think, Joanne?
it's definitely disheartening to hear that kind of anti-immigration rhetoric, because I was born in the Philippines. We and my family immigrated here, and I choose to serve in the military because to give back to a country that has given my family so much opportunity. So I always say that my why, my being Filipino American is who I am, but my why is my American patriotism. I do what I do because of my American patriotism. And then to hear somebody say immigration rhetoric, that hurts inside when I am literally doing something for this country as an immigrant. So it's very disheartening, very heartbreaking. So I am very much a news junkie, tuning in constantly, especially with election year, to see what's going to come for this nation, especially in my role in the military. So yeah, it'll be interesting for sure.
How do we, Joanne and Rasha, how do we stand up to this hatred being directed to? They like to dehumanize, more migrants coming over into the United States, and we need to close the borders. And yes, I'm in favor of some more reasonable, rational immigration control, but to actually close down the borders and no more immigrants, especially immigrants who don't look white, I think that might be part of it. How do we stand up against that?
I think that we have to band together and have a voice. And I will tell you this, Sasha and Joanne, one of the things that I was fortunate enough to do this year was actually cover different events with state legislators and individuals from Congress and from, White House reps that are of Asian American descent. And it's been so interesting to see them come together and band together and speak up. So I think what would be neat is to find out how we can connect to those reps, and let them know this is our concern. And then how do we further support those constituents? And then how do we as community come together, just as individuals, and bring together people to support them, so that we actually do build a larger group to voice our thoughts? Because I think unless we're out there voicing what we feel, once again, we get lost. I remember and I don't know how you two feel about this, but in several interviews with some of the people, you know, it was brought to my attention, and I feel this too. We come from a community that often doesn't voice themselves or speak up, right? We are very soft people. We come from these communities that necessarily aren't as aggressive. And I think this is the time where we have to speak up because we will get walked over. And I'm hopeful in that sense because after seeing the number of individuals from the community that are in these positions, I think we have an opportunity there, but we're going to have to voice it. We're going to have to reach out and connect to these offices and let them know this is a concern. How do we get involved and how do we get more people involved?
And really using our platforms that it's available to us, this podcast included, just using what is available to us, our resources to do exactly what Rasha says, getting involved and reaching out. I think the three of us are in very fortunate positions right now to be able to do that. So, because it's not enough to just be, anti something, anti-immigration rhetoric. You have to actively act on that as well. So,
what do you think, Sasha, as well? I'm going to throw the question back to you. Where do you see it?
Well, unfortunately, I don't think there's consensus. I think that oftentimes our communities do become divided because we don't feel similarly about certain things. Some groups feel they're better than other groups. I don't know why that happens, but it happens. I was disappointed. You used the word disappointed in regards to another, but I was disappointed when a politician of South Asian heritage said recently that she believes that the United States has never been a racist country. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't agree with that.
Where have you been?
Right.
I mean, we can get into a whole debate, okay? But I'm just like, what world were you living in?
There are some
where is this even stemming from?
There are some people who refuse to see racism and call it out because it's threatening to them to do that. And I don't want to talk about whether that's her motivation, but it was illuminating for me to say, oh, there's still some people in this country who don't believe or are trying to believe or trying to tell themselves that we are not a racist country and have never been. And if you come from that place, then of course none of this makes sense, right?
Right.
It's just words. Oh, you're just being woke. No, we're responding because we're responding to what we see as injustice and inequality. Oh no, we're not a racist country. It's hard to have a conversation then, right?
Right.
And even if somebody truly believes that, that's truly her experience. If she truly believes that, she can't be closed off to the fact that other people may not have that same experience.
Absolutely.
So that's just mutual understanding and empathy for people. I mean, everything comes down to empathy for humankind, humanity, like Rasha was saying earlier, right? That is just the core origin of everything that we need to be doing.
I'm telling you.
Well, ladies, we are almost out of time. and we could keep talking. Do you both have any last minute talks or last minute thoughts is what I meant to say? And Sasha, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, I was going to say, empathy, Joanne was talking about empathy and compassion. I was like, if Mr. Rogers was running for president, I would vote for him. And I might end up having to write him in
here.
Mr. Rogers, we need more empathy.
God bless Mr. Rogers. We need that right now. Joanne, any last second thoughts as we wrap up here?
No, again, just want to say thank you so much for the opportunity to be with you guys, to be with you two and learn from you. And I'm so excited to see what the season comes up with and the guests that we talk about, the discussions and expanding on the discussions from today, from this episode. So very, very, very excited.
Same here. And I'm so excited to be on this podcast along with the both of you. It's such an honor. I feel like we have such diverse backgrounds and stories and upbringings, and it's always exciting to see the different conversations that we're able to hold. So that being said, I want to thank all of our viewers and our listeners. Once again, I'm Rasha Goel.
I'm Sasha Foo.
I'm Joanne Whitlock.
And we thank you for listening to Asian Pacific Voices Radio. Now, don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Twitter X, Instagram, and YouTube to learn more about what we're doing. Follow us, our show. And even if you want to send some ideas our way or have any questions that you'd like to address, we are here for you.
And don't forget, Asian Pacific Voices Radio is produced by Asian Culture and Media Alliance, a nonprofit that empowers the Asian Pacific American communities with a voice through media arts. And if you'd like to support our program, please visit AsianPacificVoicesRadio.com.
We hope you will support us. Thanks again for listening. Please join us next week for another exciting podcast episode, another exciting and thought-provoking episode of Asian Pacific Voices Radio. And until then, take care, everyone.